Hello again, Jared Case here, curator of film exhibitions at the Dryden Theater and the George Eastman Museum. And we're continuing to give you streaming recommendations as we wait for theaters to open. They will open later this summer, and the Dryden Theater will follow not long after in the summer or fall of 2020. But in the meantime, as we're staying inside and keeping cool with the air conditioning, we thought you might need some ideas of great things to stream. And on Sundays, what we've been doing is highlighting the George Eastman Award and its recipients. The last time we did this, we talked about Meryl Streep from 1999 when she received her award. And we're going to go 2 years back from that to 1997 when Isabella Rossellini was at the museum and she received her George Eastman Award. So there aren't a lot of Isabella Rossellini films that are streaming online for subscription. There's several that you can rent or purchase, but there is one on Amazon Prime that I wanted to bring up. I think it's a bit overlooked, particularly as an Isabella Rossellini film, and it's a 1996 film called Big Night. This is a film that is co-written by Stanley Tucci and co-directed by Stanley Tucci and Campbell Scott, who are character actors that you may recognize. As Stanley Tucci is probably most familiar to people as Julia Child's husband in Julie and Julia. Campbell Scott had a small role in Dead Again and the lead in Singles back in the early 90s. And this was 96, and they were both sort of still starting out. Campbell Scott, of course, George C. Scott's son. But it's an independent film that made a really big splash at Sundance that year, and it was so that era of the big upcoming American independent films. So this was definitely in that era. And the idea behind the film is that Stanley Tucci, who also stars, is one of two brothers who are running an Italian restaurant in New Jersey back in the 1950s. Primo, played by Tony Shalhoub, is the older son, and he's a genius in the kitchen. Not only is he a genius, he's an artist, and he doesn't like that people might criticize his food without really understanding it. You know, sort of having two starches on the same plate. You just don't serve it that way. Even though people ask for it, that's not how you do food. So, Secondo, played by Stanley Tucci, is the younger brother. And he is the one that is front of house. He's running the restaurant, and he's trying to get people to come in, but it's just not going well. There's a restaurant across the street, a much bigger restaurant that appeals more to mainstream tastes. Not too bad of an analogy with our other film that's streaming right now, Other Music, which you can rent as well. So it's about the smaller restaurant that has more integrity to it against the larger restaurant that is more mainstream and just gives people what they want no matter how good or bad it is. So the owner of the restaurant across the street, played by the recently deceased Ian Holm, actually decides to help out the restaurant called Paradise, run by Tony Shalhoub and Stanley Tucci. And he invites Louis Prima to have a big meal. So they're going to have this big night, and he's going to do a concert or have some playing, and it's going to attract so much attention to the restaurant that they will be able to continue and make their food the way that they want to. Of course, he has other things in mind, and it's a wonderful, broad comedy of relationships. It's also got Allison Janney, it's got Mark Anthony, and of course Isabella Rossellini plays the mistress of not only Stanley Tucci, but also of Ian Holmes. Meanwhile, Stanley Tucci is also dating Minnie Driver, and of course Ian Holmes has his own wife, so she's sort of caught in the middle, and she's of course at this large meal that they're preparing for Louis Prima. But it's a really fun film, very funny, very insightful about family and about business, and of course this food that you watch is just wonderful. It's maybe a little too hot to make a lot of pasta right now, but you can taste it almost as you're watching this food on screen. It's another one of those wonderful food movies such as Babette's Feast. So please go ahead and check that out on Amazon Prime. That's an Isabella Rossellini film to a certain extent. Come on back for some more recommendations.